Welcome, I'm Elliot. Today I'm excited because I get to share a little bit about my process. First single that I released that I've self-wrote, mixed, produced, all of the things. This track came out a while ago, so a lot of the things will probably be different than what I would do today. But we're going to take a look at the production elements. We're going to take a look at how to make a song, what makes a song interesting. We're going to take a little bit of time to look at the mixing elements as well and how to make sounds cohesive together. So let's go. So at first glance, you can tell that I'm working in Ableton. For me, I love Ableton. I used to be in Logic, and after working with my friend Joseph, I saw that Ableton is just, in my opinion, better. And so I know that there'll probably be a lot of heckling going on in the comments, but use what works for you. There's no right answer. Okay, so up first, let's take a look at the vocal. We'll listen to what's going on here. And I'll play you a quick clip of the first verse to kind of get a sense of what we're working with here. This was recorded on an SM7B, so nothing too crazy. Hopefully it's proof that you can really use any mic to make great music. So here we go.
You get lost in your imperfections. You get lost in the things you want. But if you slow down for just 1 second, you might feel way better than you thought. And if you took a second to breathe, took a minute to cry, or maybe you would see that all this time I've been right here. Baby, I know it, life can get hard, keep going. I just wanna be the one you need right now. Baby, would you turn and look at me right now? What's going on?
Yeah, so let's take a look first at this lead vocal.
You get lost in your imperfections. You get lost in the things you want. But if you slow down for just 1 second, you might feel way better than you thought.
As you can tell, it's pretty forward, pretty present. There's a lot of energy behind it, which was the idea. I wanted this to be something that initially grabs you and sucks you into the presence of the vocal. As with most music, but especially pop, you're really going to want that vocal forward. You're going to want it to have a lot of depth. You're going to want it to be bright. You're going to want it to just accentuate all the parts of the vocal that you love. So as you can see, I've got a lot going on here. We'll take it step by step. Like I said, I'm not going to jump into too much detail so that I'm not boring you with all of the mix information, because I could go on and on and on about that. I think something to note is that my process is constantly changing, and not only my process, but my skill, my ability. As with any mix engineer, whether they've been in the business for 20 years or a year, you're still going to be learning. So I'm probably going to come across some things here that I'm not even a fan of now. It's still a part of the learning process, and it's still really beneficial, I think, for everybody to see. I use Melodyne. I took this vocal and ran it through Melodyne and hand-tuned everything. So for the EQ, I use Pro Q3 now. At the time, I think I did this back in 2021, late 2021 or early 2022, I believe. At the time, I was just using stock EQ, which is great. It does the job. I really like the usability of Pro Q3 now, but stock EQ works. It does the job. It EQs the vocal. And so here, I'm just ducking out this low end, right? So I'll give you before and after.
You get lost in your imperfections. You get lost in your imperfections.
So really easy to see right off the bat. That's going to be the most important part of your vocal chain, is going to be that EQ. You're going to want to duck out all of the low end that makes it muddy, but being careful at the same time to not take away from the natural part of the voice. So I go from my EQ into Nectar, and here what I'm doing is I'm not doing anything on the processing side of Isotope Suite, but I'm just enabled auto level mode. And all that's doing is making sure, like vocal writing, it's just making sure that level is staying right at, what do I have is that at here? Oh, -11. Out of Nectar, we're running into a gate.
You get lost in your imperfections. You get lost in the things you want.
It's taking out any of the air conditioner or whatever that you've got going on in the room. And the 7B that I used is a really great directional mic. So you're not gonna have a lot of problems with bleed and around like a large diaphragm condenser would or a small diaphragm condenser would, as those mics are more sensitive. Still, it's good practice to throw a gate on. Then I'm running it through a TubeTech CL1B, which I don't think it's doing too much.
You get lost in the things you want. But if you slow down for just 1 second, you might feel way better than you thought. And if you Took a second to breathe.
We are taking off a good healthy 3 to 5 dB off of this lead. And on the parallel compression side of things, I've got it dialed to about 40%. So we're going to keep a lot of the original source, which makes it feel live and not too squished, right? So that parallel really just puts that vocal right in front of your face, which is exactly what you want. And then out of that, I've got my Mag EQ. I think that's how you say it. I'm not sure. I'm assuming that it's Mag, Meg, who knows? But anyway, this is just adding some air, taking out some more low end. So I'll give you before and after.
You get lost in the things you want. But if you slow down for just 1 second, you might feel way better than you thought.
Right, so big difference, especially with that 7B. If you're using a 7B, you know that it's a pretty dark mic, and that's because it's a dynamic mic. So it's going to have not nearly the sensitivity that a large diaphragm would have. And so there's going to be a lot of air in the vocal that's natural that you're going to want to push out. Then I've got it going into a de-esser. This is the Eosis. I think that's how you say it. Lots of words I don't know how to say, but I think it's the Eosis E2D de-esser. And I love the way that it grabs the S's and P's and everything. It just works so well for me. There's a dry-wet mix, and then there's some automatic smoothing that you can introduce here. So yeah.
You get lost in the things you want, but if you slow down.
So pretty natural de-esser. Then I've got a utility here, and it looks like I just took out some of the S's that were bugging me. A lot of this is going to be by hand stuff that a plugin's not going to do as well as you can, right? Because there's just a lot of detail that we can introduce as producers and mix engineers that a plugin is going to try and automate on its own. But at the end of the day, if it needs to be by hand drawn in, then that's what it needs. And that's what we're going to do. So moving on, I've got another EQ. And this looks like we're just taking out 2K. We're just dynamically reducing 2K, which can be some of the harshness associated with the vocal. So moving on, as you can see, I've got a lot of effects going on here. If you're not familiar with Ableton, we have the ability to do groups. So in your audio routing, it's going to go from left to right. And then additionally, you can introduce parallel processing within the channels. I don't use any sends. I don't use any returns because I love the way that it's baked into each track. Moving on, we've got the main vocal has another EQ going on here and lots of finagling. Like I said, I may not do this now. Today, I might try and get it right at the beginning of the vocal chain, and then everything else will follow. But it looks like I've got an EQ that will turn on right here, which is...
And if you just want me to listen...
And it looks like that's just to try and duck out some of the low end of the falsetto that I did. So that's just a moment thing, just like I mentioned. Lots of drawing in by hand. And then I've got it going through Soothe 2, which is a plugin. And I am going to absolutely butcher the name of this one, but I think it's Oak Sound. Soothe 2, amazing plugin. It's one of those plugins that I really can't live without. It ducks all the harshness, and not only harshness, it can duck out a lot of the low end. So with a vocal, if you want it to sound natural and you want that beefy low end to stay present, but you don't want it to exceed a certain threshold, Soothe 2 is for sure the way to go. So let's listen to this track.
Yeah, baby, I know it. I'll be the one you need right now. Baby, would you turn and look at me right now?
So you can tell that's all of the information that we're ducking, right? And that's just the information we're ducking. So you can kind of hear there's some shiny 2.5K. There's some 3K, some 4K that we don't like. And then there's also some low end, some 150 that can be a little boomy if it's in excess. So really love the way that plugin works. Right after Soothe, we're going into this virtual channel to give it some more dynamic character and some harmonics that make it sound like a console would. So it's really great to just glue it in at the end. So moving on to the vocal effects, we've got quite a few. I'm not going to touch on all of them. I'm going to work really fast through here, but I'll take you to a bigger section so that we can hear what vocal effects I've got going on. There are a few fun things that I'm going to take a look at as well that I think are a lot of fun to jump into. So let's take a look at this last chorus.
Life can get hard, keep going. I just want to be the one you need right now. Baby, would you turn and look at me right now? Me right now. What?
So you can kind of hear the delays going on the left and right. I've got a ping pong saturated delay that just adds width to that vocal, that keeps it exciting, keeps it fresh. And then obviously I've got plenty of reverb.
I just want to be...
So that's more of a room verb, kind of a reflective thing that adds some life to that sound. Everything here, as you can see, is automated. Basically, every channel is going to be automated. I've got about 10 effects going on here, right? So we're going to take a look at this effect right here.
Breathe. Took a minute to cry, or maybe.
And you can still hear it's going, right? So that's going to be this plugin called ROM, which is a reverb. And if you ever need a reverb that's airy and lush and feels huge soundstage, this is the plugin. It's by Native Instruments. With that, I've got it going through an EQ and then that virtual channel again. And the idea behind this was on those falsetto notes that were really high, I wanted something that would just throw it forward for those high notes so that they would float above the rest of the track.
Breathe. Took a.
And you can see as well, it's automated with the gain, it's automated with muting, with unmuting. So there's just a lot going on here. If I took the time to explain everything, it would take forever. Yeah, and so as we move a little bit back, there's a few words that just have a momentary effect on them. And I think that that's what we would consider ear candy. So if you're familiar with production, ear candy is just going to be little things that you're not going to notice at like first listen, but add so much when you take them out. It's really important to have a lot of ear candy going on.
But if you slow down for just 1 second, you might feel way better.
Yeah, so if we take a solo to it, it even pitches down, which kind of adds to the effect. And this is Valhalla delay. Lovely delay. Just does a great job. And I got to run through an EQ, and that's about it there.
But we don't have to hurry, 'cause our conversation's always in its.
Yeah, so there's another thing that you may not notice at first glance, but this is going to be going through RC20, which is kind of a character with bitrate, so many different things going on and all in one plugin.
But we don't have to hurry, 'cause our conversation's always in its.
And I've got it going through Primal Tap, which is a delay, and then I've got it going through Auto Pan to move it left and right. And then Tremolator and just a ton of different stuff to give it that dimension to the vocal so that in that moment it feels like, whoa, you're surrounded by the vocal. So we're going to move on. I'm not going to spend too much time in every instance. But before we do, there's one last effect that I wanted to take a look at. Like I said, there's 10 of them. So I could go into each one. And if y'all really want that, let me know. But I think that that's going to take a long time. So into this bridge section, I wanted to have a moment where it was kind of this instrumental like build into the final chorus, just so we have some separation between choruses and so that there's one final moment. So here we go. I've got an effect here called Crystallizer, and what this is doing is it's reversing the source material, just creating this like cyclical moving delay that's gonna keep going. I think it's set to go infinitely. Obviously it doesn't go forever because the song ends. I've got it going through Crystallizer, and then I've got this plugin chain automated to where on one phrase it pitches it up through little altar boy. Lots of Sound Toys plugins going on here. Just about all of Sound Toys is on this one channel. Then I've got it going through Little Micro Shift, which is going to add some width. Devil Lock, which is going to crunch up the sound. It's going to add some distortion and flavor to it. And then finally through Tremolator, which is going to add some tremolo to the signal, which is going to make it feel like it's back and forth. Then finally, it's going to go through EQ to clean up some of that low end, and virtual channel again, which is just going to add some more saturation to add some flavor. Probably didn't need to do that, but I think I was doing it to every channel on this song, so I just went ahead and did that to keep things clean. So let's take a listen to this channel.
Here right now, right now.
So like I said, it could go on forever, but that's just another way to add another section to a song by creating ear candy that becomes the primary part of the song. Okay, moving on, we're going to take a look at the BGVs here, and we'll do this quickly. I did go through and Melodyne each channel. I don't think that I went too in depth with everything, but went through a Melodyne each channel, and then each channel has a little bit of a vocal chain on it. Looks like most of them are going through the LA2 Silver, which is going to be a faster attack. You'll also see the Mag EQ, Nectar, a lot of the similar things that we see in our lead vocal. So the BGVs together will sound like this.
Keep going.
And then in the ooze section, we've got a little bit more reverb introduced.
And
And obviously we've got that automated so that at the very end, you've got this big lush and then it sucks down into a final chorus, which starts out with a down section, which is just a cappella. So moving on, this is kind of the fun part of revealing the process of the song. I actually have a story. My roommate at the time was using the bathroom, which was right outside of my door. And he was like, what is going on in there? And it was me recording the gangs in quotation marks for when everybody yells right now. So that's me in a bunch of different voices. And then I crushed it all together to make a type of gang vocal, you could say. So let's take a listen. Which I think when it's buried, you don't hear it, but I guess in humility, I'll show you guys what it actually sounds like without plugins. Oh yeah, and... So on each channel, I sang it in a different way. So one of them, I'm holding my nose. The other one, I'm singing it up an octave. The other one, I'm yelling it, like, here we go.
Oh yeah, and... Oh yeah, and... Oh yeah, and...
Kind of a humbling moment, but you gotta do what you gotta do. I've got all of these vocals going through a single channel, which is titled Gangs, going through an EQ, a distortion plugin, another EQ, reverb, tremulator that turns on and off depending on the section. So now let's move into the instrumental section. I've got everything routed in two sections here, which are vocals and instrumental. The instrumental has a few plugins on it. One is Soothe, which we've seen earlier, and this is going to be side-chained, which means I'm feeding the lead vocal into this channel so that whenever the vocal comes in, the rest of the channel is going to be ducked. The instrumental channel will be ducked whenever that vocal comes in so that that lead vocal is front, present, there's nothing in the way. If we take a look here.
Lost in your imperfections. You get lost in the things you want.
You can see it's not doing too much, right? We're just doing a little bit here, a little bit there. I'm only ducking a little bit in this 3 to 1K range to leave room for that lead vocal to be right out front and present. Okay, so the first thing that you hear in the song is that ukulele. When I originally wrote the song, I believe I had the ukulele with me, and this was recorded a long time ago compared to when the song was out. Yeah, I just did a couple takes to pan hard left and right to do some doubles for this ukulele sound. And all I'm doing here is I'm EQing. Once again, I'm ducking out the low end, taking out a few frequencies that I didn't like. And then finally, I've got it going through a single effect chain, and that's a reverse reverb. So you can hear that it kind of pulses and adds another dimension to the sound. And then finally, I've got an octave ukulele that comes in right before it drops into that pre-chorus. But you can tell it's really low in the mix. It's not going to be out front. It's not going to be right in your face. And the idea behind this was to give it just a little bit more body right before we jump into that first chorus. So also at the very beginning of the song, you're going to have just some loop that I pulled off a splice and really liked the way that it added a lot of energy. And so especially starting out the song with kind of this ear candy beginning to the song is great. And that's it. Nothing crazy. So moving on, there's a Rhodes that you hear throughout the song that comes in, comes out, and this is going to be Keyscape. I've got just this LA custom Rhodes here. Sounds like this. So it's really just a short blurb, and that's whenever I sing this line.
Well, maybe you would see that all this time.
All we're doing to this channel is adding a little bit of character. So we've got it going through radiator, and that's parallel processed, right? So we've got a dry signal and radiator on one group. And all that that's doing is adding just a little bit of mid information that's going to add some harmonics. So let's hear before and after. After that, I've got another EQ that it looks like I've automated off and on, depending on the section. And then I've also got a reverse Rhodes going here. So whenever we go into verse 2, there's a reverse. Nothing crazy going on here, just another EQ, scooping out low end, introducing some side information, it looks like. And then we've got the virtual channel once again. And I probably took that from a reverb as well. So the electric. This was a real task. I took just the clean electric sound, which was going direct in. It's got P90s on it. I'm running it through a chorus, adding some air to it, compressing, taking out some resonances that I didn't like. Then I've got it going through a phaser. So big difference. Add some width, add some dimension there. And then we got Pro Q. Like I said, I started the song when I didn't have the Fab Filter stuff, and then finished mixing with the Fab Filter stuff. So you'll see a little bit of Fab Filter and then a little bit of stock EQ. And it looks like here I've just got a dynamic EQ that's ducking at 3.5K, and that's just to take out some of that harshness. As you can tell, it's super chopped up here. And the reason for that is because I wanted this electric to feel so tight. I didn't want it to feel at all like it was this like natural electric. I wanted it to just be this wide electric that was just straight in your face. And once again, it's going to be a minor thing, but once all the details are together, it's going to make a lot of sense. Okay, moving on. We've got the 808. And the 808 with the drum sounds like this. So you can tell that I've got the 808 sidechain to the kick, which takes out some of that low end so it's not getting muddy. It's not pushing that low end too hard at the end so it hits the limiter too hard. And then I've also got it running through a radiator, which before and after is going to be a big difference. There's also a change in level there, obviously, but the idea is that the saturation really, really helps. So if you're trying to get an 808 to translate over an iPhone speaker, or cars that have a smaller speaker setup, or on a computer, really lots of places that are going to be public environments, you're going to want to have saturation on your low end. That's going to add a lot of depth and ability to hear the low frequencies that a smaller speaker can't produce. So I've got a sidechain. It looks like I've got another sidechain here that's sidechain to the tom fill. Those tom fills probably have a lot of low end information. And then I've got this TDR Nova, which is dynamically making sure that that low end, when it gets super low, doesn't get too loud. I probably would have done this with Pro Q if I had it. Then I've got this section called No Low. I totally took this straight from Michelangelo from one of his production breakdowns, and all that this is doing is making sure that all of the synth in this section isn't producing low information so that it doesn't compete, right? A lot of this is just cleaning up, making sure that the low end is right out front. The synth information going on here is going to be pretty pivotal to the song. So let's take a look. Right here, it looks like I froze the synth. This is Anna 2. It's a great synth. Probably I'm using it at other places, but right here, let's take a listen. So that's going to be your mid to high frequency range of information. So this organ is going to be a pretty subtle instrument that you're going to hear. You can hear that there's some compression going on. There's the tremolator again. We'll see this a lot. All of this is doing is kind of creating this pulsing feeling, and that adds just a dimension of movement. It makes you feel like you're moving forward. So we've got this low ARP that's going to be towards the end of the song, and it's going to sound like this. So that's going to be a really grungy forward sound. There's a lot of words as I describe stuff that's going to be kind of a buzzword, right? Like grungy and crunchy and soft and light and harsh and all of these words. It's just the best way to describe what's going on. So moving on, I've got this effect track, which we've got it going through some saturation. Got it going through some width, some panning left and right. It just felt right in the moment. Then I've got it going through a chorus, and then finally our virtual mix rack, which is on almost every channel. Okay, next I've got some pulse synths that most likely were Anna to the synth that is by Sonic Academy. But here, these are just gonna, once again, add more pulse. A lot of this song is just trying to keep things pumping, trying to keep things moving as the song progresses, and they sound like this. So we've got these two pulse synths kind of working in tandem here. We've got a lower one and a higher one. The higher one is adding some dimension, some width, and then the lower one is just giving it some beef to keep the song moving. Looks like we've got a Salina here, which is a type of synth. So before any processing was added, it sounds like this. So you're still going to have a lot of length, you're going to have a lot of resonance going on, but once we add all the plugins back, it's going to add some air. We're going to take out the low end, we're going to compress it a little bit, and then we've got a center channel, it looks like here, trying to keep things more focused, more in the middle, and then I've got a dynamic EQ, which this EQ is free, by the way. You can go pick this up right now from TDR, I believe is the maker of that plugin. And that's going to have a dynamic EQ on it. Then I've got an auto pan, which this is actually not auto panning. This is doing the same thing that the tremolator is doing on other channels, which is just ducking and creating that movement. An imager, which it looks like we're stereoizing, and then virtual mix rack once again. Then moving on, at the end of the song, the last thing that you hear really is the synth solo, which did take a lot of time to dial in and figure out what I wanted it to sound like. So let's take a listen. So that's the poster child of automation, right? There's a lot that you can hear going on. And I think that I froze it, so I can't really show you what I did. But as you can hear, there's frequency sweeps going on the entire time. We've got different channels, right? So we've got a high, a low, a mid. That comes together and sounds really full, really forward, and wide as well. There's a lot of width going on. And then I've got a reverse here. So, and then before, I've got a sweep up that pitches up straight up to the synth, makes you feel like you're going straight into that synth solo. Then below, I've got a tom arp. This really isn't a synth, it's a drum, but I'm just taking this tom, and I think I took this from my friend Joseph, but anyway, all that it's doing is creating this pulsy, percussive sound that's you really can't hear it if you're listening to the whole mix. So let's take a listen to the mix, and then I'll solo it up for you. And that's going to be something that you really don't hear, but if I take it out, you're going to be like, oh, wait, where did the movement go? So let's take a listen to it with and without. So like I said, pretty noticeable. You really feel like, whoa, where did the meat of the song go? Which is kind of crazy. A lot of frequency information that goes missing whenever you take it out. Okay, moving on. Let's hit the drums. We're going to just go straight from this last chorus. Talk about patterns and all of that, but a lot of it's just what feels right. You know, don't overthink what you're doing. If you're a producer, just enjoy what you're doing and feel the moment. Like if it feels right, it's right. You know, if it feels right to you, it's right. There's not a right way or a wrong way to go about creating a pattern. So let's take a listen to this drum bus. So got a lot going on here. I've got some compression going on with this Class A Shadow Hills mastering compressor. So this has a couple different thresholds that we can work with. You're going to have an optical, and then you're also going to have a discrete channel that's going to help with compression. Keep everything really balanced out throughout the song. Got my virtual mix rack here, where it's going to be a bus emulation of a analog console. Then I've got a dynamic EQ here. It looks like when I was doing this, I was missing some of the 200 hertz punch. So whenever that 200 hertz hits a threshold, it's going to bring up this EQ. Let's see if it does anything here. Looks like I mainly did that for the snare. I wanted the snare to really have some low end punch, and maybe as I was EQing, I took some of that out and thought it would be best to do that on the drum bus channel. So I've got some, it looks like fuzz cymbals going on. I've got this Saturator plugin, which is going to be like a fuzz plugin. So just adding some saturation. I've got some hats, lots of hats. I've also got a crash cymbal here. Right, it's nothing special. It worked for the moment, so I went with it. Then I've got my snares. And I'm going to say right off the bat, This is something that I probably won't do now. I've got, I think it's 7 channels of snares for that one snare. Some of them alternate, but most of them are just the same snare sound. What ended up happening was I was trying to create this snare sound that had the top end, the low end, the mid-range, the snap, crack, all the different parts of the snare that I wanted for the song. And I think it turned out great, but in retrospect, I probably could have found a sample that was closer to what I wanted than the 2 racks that I've got going on here. So let's take a listen to the snare. See, it works great. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, but if I'm giving myself a hard time, I would probably say we could have done better than that. And I think what originally happened was I started with a snare and I went back into the session and I was like, I don't really like the way that sounds. So I made a new one and I was like, it's okay. And then I added them together and I was like, oh, that's really amazing. So I just went with it. Don't spend too much time worrying about being perfect or doing everything the right way, right? Just do what feels right. Looks like here we've got the perk channel. There's a lot of perk in this song. I felt like it was really critical that there's a lot of ear candy perk going on, lots of congas, lots of just little tom things, little rototoms, little loops, all sorts of stuff. So like right here, the tom fills are all throughout the song. So let's listen to this. I love that so much. It goes from right to left, feels like a cartoon kind of tom, you know, like do. Just, I love it. Works so well with the song. This is like the last chorus right here. And if you remember at the beginning, there was that intro, which was this loop, which you hear throughout the song a ton as well. It's just that like skippy do. Just continues to propel the song forward, makes everything sit perfectly. And then you've also got a lot of little clicks and pops and congas like this, which you hear all the time, like the da, like this. Just adds to the dimension of the song. Looks like I've got that automated as well, depending on the section. And then there's these congas right here. Just kind of this vintage 808 drum machine kind of feel, which kind of glues it together as the song continues on. So let's take a listen to this.
Baby, I know.
I'm all about creating moments in the song. And so I want something that leads into that final breakdown where it's the acapella, baby, I know it. I felt like a great way to do that was to add this like Oliver drum fill here that I felt like was so perfect. That's probably used for EDM songs that are going to have like crazy drops, but in context, it sounds awesome. Got the tom fill that we talked about, and then lots of normal toms like this. Once again, just a little bit of top EQ, some reverb, it looks like here, an EQ, and then I've got this ozone imager, which I just added a little bit of width there. Moving on, we've got the kick, and it doesn't look like I did too much to this kick. It looks like I've got a snap section of the kick. It sounds like this. And then I've got the beef, the main kick. It sounds like this. And then together they sound like this. Right, so I just wanted something that cut through the mix. So just threw an EQ on there, ducked out some of this right here, which looks like it's 300 hertz. And then there's a utility that I was probably going to automate the gain on something, but didn't end up doing it. I summed it to mono before. And then I've got these drum bus plugins, which I don't use as much now, but at the time I would use this to add some boom or drive or whatever. It's a great stock plugin that can glue together a drum bus. For this song, I use risers a lot. The specific risers that I use, I don't remember, but they worked really well. So let's take a look. And you can hear this in the main mix. So let's take a listen to everything together and listen for that riser. So that's just going to add a lot of energy to the track. It really glues the track together. And so it looks like I've got a few of those. Some EQ here, some reverb, Soothe 2, taking out some of that harsh frequencies so that whenever a big section hits, it sounds like this. Which is just going to be a long trail. It's really going to propel the next section forward. So finally, the last thing that I want to touch on is my mix bus. Wasn't doing a ton on this mix bus. There's a couple plugins here that aren't important. This is my SonarWorks plugin, and all that that's doing is it's room correction software for my room, for my speakers, so that things sound the right way. And then this is so that I can record for the audio for this video. Starting out, I've got it going through this plugin called Gullfoss. I believe that this plugin was modeled after a waterfall called Gullfoss. I believe it's like Iceland or something is where this waterfall is. They measured the frequency range of that waterfall, and they ended up saying this is the most pleasing sound to the ear. So this plugin is a dynamic EQ that adjusts to match that. So if we take a listen, I'll play with and without, and we'll just hit this first chorus.
Me right now, what's going on? You can tell me everything that's going wrong.
And without.
Me right now, what's going on? You can tell me everything that's going wrong.
So really, it's just adding a lot of top end, but it dynamically adjusts based on the source content, which is awesome. Then I've got it going through the Black Box HD2 MS, adding some saturation. So we've got mid and side, and on the side, I've got some air. So you're going to hear it on only the left side and only the right side. You're going to hear some lift in the presence of the audio. And then I've got this paralleled so that it's only doing about 37%. Let's hear with and without this.
Life can get hard, keep going. I just wanna be the one you need right now. Baby, would you turn and look at me right now?
So we're not doing a ton, right? There's really not a lot going on here. When you get to your final mix bus, if you're doing a lot, there's probably something wrong, right? You want your mix to really work well all the way to the finish line. And then once it hits that final mix bus, you want everything to just be icing on the cake. You want it all to glue together really well. Then I've got it going through this virtual mix bus, which is, once again, the Slate virtual channel. Works really well, just adds a little bit of that non-linearities in the audio, makes the left and the right work together better. Really subtle changes though. And then I've got standard clip, got 4% saturation. I do have a ceiling on here, so if anything hits 0 dB, it's gonna be completely cut, which is a limiter, if you're familiar with limiting. But other than that, I left it up to my mastering engineer, Sam, and he did a great job with the track. So lots of different ways to achieve a final mix, but this was the way that I did it on this track, and I'm sure that in a couple of years, the way that I do it now will change too. So it's just part of the journey of doing production. So thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, I really appreciate you. Excited for what we're doing here. Thanks to Tucker for all of his help with this video. It's been just a blast, and really excited to just talk about what I love to do, and grateful that I get an opportunity to do it. So look out for more videos. We'll see how this does. Just kind of experimenting, seeing what people like, what they love to, what they like to watch, what they didn't like. Leave a comment on what you want to see in future videos. Leave comments for questions. I'll for sure reply. I'd love to answer any questions that you have. If I didn't touch on something that you want to hear, let me know. If I talk too long about something, let me know. Just totally excited and happy to do this. So yeah, there you have it. If you want to like the video, go for it. If you want to subscribe, go for it. I know that it's cliche, but I think it's just the way that YouTube works, so we're gonna make do with what we've got. But in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I can't wait to put some more content your way.